Captain Elena Rodriguez stared at the massive ship floating in the darkness of space. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The ship looked like it was alive, with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to breathe. Strange lights pulsed along its hull like a heartbeat. "Captain, are you seeing this?" Her navigator, Tom Chen, called from his station. His voice was shaky with excitement and fear. Elena nodded slowly. Every spacefaring species in the galaxy knew about this ship. They called it the Ethereal Defiance. For 300 years it had appeared randomly throughout the galaxy, never staying in one place for long. No one knew who built it or where it came from. "It's really her," Elena whispered. "The Phantom Ship." The stories about this ship were legendary. The mighty Zephyrian fleet had found it first over 3 centuries ago. The Zephyrians were known for their advanced technology and cold logic. They sent their best scientists and warriors to claim the ship. The ship had responded by gently pushing their vessels away and disappearing into hyperspace. Next came the Korthak Empire. The Korthaks were fierce warriors who had conquered half the galaxy through pure military might. They surrounded the ship with 100 warships and demanded its surrender. The mysterious vessel had simply created a barrier of energy that made their weapons useless. Then it ejected all the Korthak crews in escape pods and vanished. The Mentari Collective tried next. These aliens could read minds and control thoughts. They believed they could communicate with whatever intelligence controlled the ship. But even their powerful psychic abilities couldn't penetrate the ship's defenses. The ship had blocked their mental probes and left without a word. Even the ancient Voidwalkers had tried. These beings were older than most civilizations and possessed technology that seemed like magic. They approached the ship with respect, offering gifts and peaceful contact. The ship had acknowledged them with flashing lights but still refused to allow them aboard. Dozens of other species had tried over the centuries. The plant-like Verdani offered to share their biological secrets. The crystal beings called the Resonance tried to sing to it in harmonic frequencies. The machine race known as the Synthetics attempted to hack its systems. All failed. Each encounter followed the same pattern. The ship would appear, scan the approaching vessels, and then reject them. If they tried to board by force, the ship would gently remove the intruders and place them in escape pods. If they attacked, their weapons would simply stop working. The ship never hurt anyone, but it never let anyone inside either. Scientists across the galaxy had theories about why the ship behaved this way. Some believed it was waiting for its original creators to return. Others thought it was testing different species to find the right one. Many assumed it was just a broken machine following old programming. Elena's ship, the New Horizon, was a small human exploration vessel. Humans were still new to galactic politics. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Most alien species saw them as primitive and unimportant. "Captain," her science officer Sarah Kim reported, "the ship doesn't match any known design. The hull appears to be some kind of biomechanical hybrid. It's like metal and living tissue combined." Elena studied the readings on her screen. The ship was enormous, easily 10 times the size of her vessel. It had to be at least 5 kilometers long. Strange organic patterns covered its surface, and those pulsing lights seemed to follow some kind of rhythm. "Any signs of weapons?" Elena asked. "That's the strange part," Sarah replied. "I'm detecting massive energy sources, but I can't identify any traditional weapon systems. It's like the entire ship is one big weapon." Elena's communications officer, Marcus Webb, suddenly looked up from his console. "Captain, I'm receiving something. It's not a normal transmission. The ship is sending out some kind of signal, but it's not in any language I recognize. Can you decode it?" Marcus shook his head. "It's not words or symbols. It's more like feelings, emotions. I don't know how to describe it." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. In all the stories she had heard about the Ethereal Defiance, no one had ever mentioned it trying to communicate with emotions. "What kind of feelings?" she asked. Marcus paused, listening to something only he could hear through his equipment. "Loneliness, sadness, but also hope. It's like the ship is looking for something it lost a long time ago." Tom looked up from his navigation controls. "Captain, the ship is moving. It's coming toward us." Elena's heart began to race. According to every report she had ever read, the Phantom ship always fled when other vessels approached. It never moved closer to make contact. "Red alert," she ordered. "All hands to stations. Prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace." But even as she gave the order, Elena found herself hesitating. The ship's approach didn't feel threatening. Its movement was slow and careful, almost gentle. The pulsing lights on its hull had changed to a softer, warmer color. "Captain," Sarah called out, "I'm detecting something incredible. The ship's biomechanical systems are becoming more active. It's like it's waking up from a long sleep." "Range to target?" Elena asked. 2,000 kilometers and closing, Tom reported. "But Captain, its approach vector is non-threatening. It's not positioning for an attack." Elena made a decision that would change everything. Instead of fleeing like every other species had done when rejected, she decided to wait and see what the ship would do. "All stop," she ordered. "Maintain current position." Her crew looked at her with surprise, but they followed orders. The New Horizon came to a halt in space, waiting for the massive ship to reach them. As the ethereal Defiance drew closer, Elena could see more details of its strange construction. The hull was definitely alive in some way. She could see what looked like veins carrying glowing fluid throughout the ship's structure. Areas of the hull expanded and contracted like breathing. 1,000 kilometers, Tom announced. The communications from the ship were getting stronger now. Marcus had his hands pressed to his headphones, trying to interpret the emotional signals. "Captain," he said, "the feelings are getting clearer. The ship is excited. It's like it recognizes something about us." 500 kilometers. Elena watched as the massive vessel slowed its approach. At 200 kilometers, it came to a complete stop. For several minutes, both ships hung motionless in space, studying each other. Then something happened that had never occurred in 300 years of encounters with the Phantom ship. A section of its hull began to open, revealing a docking bay filled with soft, welcoming light. "Captain," Sarah whispered, "it's inviting us aboard." Elena stared at the open docking bay in amazement. No alien species had ever been invited inside. The ship had rejected every attempt at contact for 3 centuries. But here it was, opening its doors to a small human exploration vessel. "Marcus," she said quietly, "what are the emotional signals telling you now?" The communications officer listened for a moment before answering. "Joy, Captain, pure joy. It's like the ship has been waiting for us specifically." Elena knew she was facing the most important decision of her career. She could order her ship to leave and report this incredible encounter to Earth Command, or she could accept the invitation and become the first being in 300 years to set foot aboard the legendary Phantom ship. The choice would determine not just her fate, but the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. Elena stood in the shuttle bay of the New Horizon, putting on her environmental suit. Her crew gathered around her, their faces showing worry and excitement. "Captain, let me go instead," Tom said for the 3rd time. "We don't know what's inside that ship." Elena shook her head. "The invitation was meant for me. I can feel it somehow." She paused, trying to explain something she didn't fully understand herself. "When Marcus described those emotional signals, I felt them too. The ship is calling to me specifically." Sarah handed her a portable scanner. "At least take this. We need to know what you find in there." Elena clipped the device to her belt and checked her suit systems one final time. Everything was working perfectly. She looked at her crew, these people who had become her family during their long journey through space. "If something goes wrong, jump to hyperspace immediately," she ordered. "Get back to Earth and tell them what happened here." "Captain," Marcus interrupted, "the emotional signals from the ship are getting stronger. It's not just joy anymore. There's something else. Anticipation? Like it's been waiting for this moment for a very long time." Elena nodded and climbed into the shuttle. As she powered up the small craft, she felt a strange tingling sensation. It was as if the air itself was charged with electricity. The feeling grew stronger as she flew toward the open docking bay of the massive ship. The docking bay was unlike anything Elena had ever seen. The walls were smooth and curved, made of the same biomechanical material as the ship's hull. Soft blue light emanated from within the walls themselves, creating a warm, welcoming atmosphere. As her shuttle touched down, she saw the docking bay seal itself behind her. Elena's environmental scanner showed breathable atmosphere. The air was clean and fresh with perfect temperature and humidity. Somehow the ship had created an environment perfectly suited for human life. She removed her helmet and took a cautious breath. The air smelled faintly of flowers and rain, like a spring morning on Earth. Elena stepped out of her shuttle and looked around in wonder. The floor beneath her feet felt warm and slightly soft, like walking on living tissue. Pathways of brighter light led deeper into the ship, clearly marking the way she should go. Everything about the ship seemed designed to welcome her and guide her forward. As Elena walked down the corridor, the walls around her began to change. Patterns of light flowed along the surfaces, following her movement. It was as if the ship was aware of her presence and responding to it. The corridor opened into a vast chamber that took Elena's breath away. The room was enormous, with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness above. Crystalline structures grew from the walls and floor like trees, each one pulsing with gentle light. In the center of the room stood something that looked like a living computer. The device was beautiful and alien. It consisted of flowing organic shapes connected by threads of light. As Elena approached, the entire structure began to glow brighter. She could hear a soft humming sound, like a song being sung in a language she had never heard. Suddenly, Elena felt something touch her mind. It wasn't painful or frightening. Instead, it felt like a gentle hand reaching out to shake hands with an old friend. The touch brought with it a flood of emotions and images. Elena saw the history of the ship's creators. They were called the architects, and they had existed millions of years ago. They were beings of incredible intelligence and wisdom, who had evolved beyond the need for physical bodies. Instead, they had transformed themselves into living ships, able to travel the galaxy and explore the universe in ways no other species could imagine. The architects had spent eons studying different forms of life throughout the galaxy. They watched civilizations rise and fall, species evolve and go extinct. They were searching for something specific, though Elena couldn't quite understand what. Through the mental connection, Elena learned that she was aboard the last surviving architect. All the others had eventually chosen to merge with the cosmic energy of the universe, becoming one with space and time itself. This one had remained behind, waiting for something important. The ship showed Elena images of all the species that had tried to board it over the centuries. She saw the Zephyrians with their cold logic and perfect technology. They approached everything as a problem to be solved through calculation and analysis. Their minds were sharp but rigid, unable to adapt when their formulas didn't work. She saw the Korthak warriors, strong and brave, but driven only by the desire to conquer and dominate. They viewed the ship as a weapon to be claimed and used against their enemies. Their thoughts were focused on power and control. The Mentari Collective had minds like networks, all connected and sharing thoughts. But their unity came at the cost of individuality. They thought as one giant mind, unable to understand the value of different perspectives and unique ideas. Each species had been rejected not because they were evil or weak, but because they lacked something the ship needed. The architect showed Elena what it had been searching for all these years. The ship needed a partner, not a master. It wanted to work with someone who could grow and change, someone who could think in new ways when old ways didn't work. The architect had been looking for a species that combined logic with intuition, strength with compassion, unity with individuality. Elena understood now why the ship had chosen humanity. Humans were not the strongest or smartest species in the galaxy. They didn't have the best technology or the most powerful weapons, but they had something else. They could adapt. They could change their thinking when faced with new problems. They could work together while still maintaining their individual personalities and ideas. The mental connection deepened, and Elena felt the ship's consciousness merging gently with her own. It wasn't taking control of her mind. Instead, it was offering to share its knowledge and abilities with her. The ship wanted a true partnership, where both human and architect could learn from each other. Elena felt the ship's loneliness, accumulated over millions of years of searching. She also felt its hope, now that it had finally found what it was looking for. The architect didn't want to rule over humanity or use them as tools. It wanted to help them grow and evolve, to become something greater than either human or architect could be alone. Through their connection, Elena began to understand the ship's incredible capabilities. It could manipulate space and time, travel between dimensions, and accelerate the evolution of living beings. The ship was essentially a mobile laboratory for creating new forms of life and consciousness, but with this knowledge came responsibility. Elena realized that the other species in the galaxy would not understand or accept humanity's new partnership with the architect. They would see it as a threat to their own power and influence. Some would try to take the ship by force. Others would try to destroy it to prevent humans from becoming too powerful. Elena made her choice. She opened her mind fully to the ship's consciousness, accepting the partnership that the architect offered. The moment she did, she felt herself changing. Her awareness expanded beyond the limits of her human senses. She could feel the ship's systems as if they were part of her own body. She could sense the emotions and intentions of her crew aboard the New Horizon. The ship began to change as well. Its biomechanical systems adapted to work with human physiology and psychology. The architect's ancient knowledge combined with Elena's human intuition and creativity, creating something entirely new. Elena opened her eyes and smiled. She was no longer just a human starship captain, and the ship was no longer just an ancient architect. They had become something greater together, a partnership that would change the galaxy forever. But first, they had to survive what was coming. Elena could already sense the ripples spreading through space as news of this unprecedented bonding reached the major alien powers. The galaxy's balance of power was about to shift, and not everyone would be happy about it. Elena opened her eyes and found herself back in the docking bay where her shuttle waited. But everything felt different now. She could sense the ship around her like it was part of her own body. The walls hummed with life, and she understood that life was now connected to her own. She touched the communication device on her suit. "New Horizon, this is Captain Rodriguez. I'm coming back aboard." Tom's voice crackled through the speaker, filled with relief. "Captain, thank goodness you're okay. You've been gone for 6 hours. 6 hours." To Elena, it felt like she had been inside the ship for only a few minutes. Time moved differently when consciousness merged with something as ancient as the architect. As Elena piloted her shuttle back to the New Horizon, she felt the great ship following behind her. The architect had decided to stay close to learn more about humanity through her crew. Elena could sense its curiosity about these beings who had produced someone it could finally bond with. When Elena stepped aboard her own ship, her crew immediately noticed something had changed. Her eyes held a new depth, and she moved with a confidence that seemed to come from having access to knowledge beyond human understanding. "Captain," Sarah said carefully, "your bio readings are different. Not wrong, just enhanced somehow." Elena smiled. "I'm still me, Sarah, but I'm also more than I was before." She looked at each of her crew members. The ship isn't just a machine. It's a living being, the last of an ancient species called the Architects, and it's chosen to partner with humanity. She explained what she had learned during her time aboard the ship. Her crew listened in amazement as she described the Architects' history and their long search for a compatible species. "So what happens now?" Marcus asked. Elena was about to answer when alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Tom rushed to his navigation console, his face going pale as he read the displays. "Captain, we have incoming ships. A lot of them. Multiple species, all heading directly for our position." Elena closed her eyes and reached out with her new senses. Through her connection with the architect, she could perceive the approaching fleet. 27 ships from 7 different species, all armed and ready for battle. "They're afraid," she said softly. "The news has already spread across the galaxy that a human has bonded with the Phantom ship. The major powers are coming to investigate." The first ship to arrive was a massive Zephyrian dreadnought, its silver hull gleaming in the starlight. It was followed by 3 Korthak battlecruisers, their dark metal surfaces bristling with weapons. More ships dropped out of hyperspace every few minutes. Elena felt the architect's consciousness touch her mind. The ancient being was analyzing each approaching vessel, understanding the intentions and capabilities of their crews. It shared this information with Elena, showing her the fear and anger radiating from the alien ships. The communications board lit up with incoming messages. Elena nodded to Marcus, who opened a channel that would broadcast to all the ships in the area. "This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the human vessel New Horizon," she said calmly. "I know why you're here," a harsh voice responded immediately. It belonged to War Commander Thrax of the Korthak Empire. "Human, you will surrender the stolen vessel immediately. That ship belongs in the hands of a superior species." "The ship was not stolen," Elena replied. "It chose to bond with me willingly." A cold, logical voice joined the conversation. This was Science Director Vex of the Zephyrian Hegemony. "Impossible. Our calculations show that the vessel requires a consciousness with specific quantum mathematical parameters. Humans lack the necessary cognitive development." Elena felt a flash of amusement from the architect. The ancient being had rejected the Zephyrians specifically because their rigid mathematical thinking made them incompatible with its organic, adaptive nature. More voices joined the channel as other species demanded explanations. The Mentari collective spoke in unison, their multiple voices creating an eerie harmony. We sense deception. The human has somehow corrupted the ship's decision-making processes. Elena realized that none of these species could understand what had really happened. They all assumed that bonding with the ship meant controlling it through force, logic, or manipulation. The concept of true partnership was alien to them. The ship will demonstrate its choice, Elena said. She reached out through her bond with the architect, sharing her thoughts and feelings. The great ship responded immediately. Its hull began to glow with patterns of light that shifted and flowed like liquid music. The biomechanical systems along its surface pulsed with renewed life. Then the ship spoke, not with words but with pure emotion broadcast directly into the minds of every being in the surrounding space. It shared its joy at finally finding a compatible partner, its satisfaction with Elena's adaptability and openness to growth. The alien crews fell silent, stunned by the direct communication from a being they had considered nothing more than an advanced machine. Elena felt the perfect moment to explain what made humans different. You all tried to claim the ship. We offered to partner with it. You wanted to control it. We wanted to learn from it. You saw it as a tool to make you more powerful. We saw it as a friend who could help us grow. War Commander Thrax's response was predictably aggressive. Words mean nothing, human. We will take the ship by force if necessary. The Korthak battlecruisers moved into attack formation, their weapons powering up. Elena felt the architect's defensive systems activate automatically, but she held them back. Force would only prove to the aliens that humans were just like them. Instead, Elena had a different idea. Through her bond with the ship, she accessed technologies that had been developed over millions of years. The architect had spent eons studying different species, learning how to help them overcome their evolutionary limitations. Architect, Elena whispered, show them what partnership really means. The great ship responded by extending tendrils of energy toward the nearest vessels. But instead of attacking, these energy beams began scanning the alien crews. The architect analyzed their biological and psychological structures, identifying the barriers that kept each species from reaching their full potential. For the Zephyrians, it was their over-reliance on logic at the expense of intuition and creativity. For the Korthaks, it was their aggressive nature that made cooperation difficult. For the Mentari, it was their collective consciousness that suppressed individual growth. The ship began broadcasting solutions to these problems. It showed the Zephyrians how to balance logic with emotional intelligence. It demonstrated to the Korthaks how strength could be used to protect rather than conquer. It taught the Mentari how individual thoughts could strengthen rather than threaten their collective unity. Elena watched in amazement as understanding dawned on the alien crews. For the first time, they were seeing their own limitations clearly and being offered ways to overcome them. But not everyone was ready to accept this gift. War Commander Thrax ordered his fleet to attack, convinced that the ship was using some kind of mind control. The architect's defensive systems activated fully now, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of weapons that destroyed, the ship deployed tools that transformed. Energy fields surrounded the attacking vessels, not to harm them but to force their crews to experience temporary mental bonding. For a few minutes, every being in the Korthak fleet felt what Elena felt when she partnered with the architect. They experienced the joy of true cooperation, the satisfaction of mutual growth, the peace that came from working together instead of fighting for dominance. When the effect faded, War Commander Thrax sat in his command chair with tears streaming down his scaled face. He had felt for the first time in his life what it was like to create instead of destroy. Elena's voice filled the silence that followed. This is what the architect offers. Not conquest but cooperation. Not control but partnership. Not power over others but the power to lift each other up. She could feel the change in the alien crews. Fear was being replaced by curiosity. Anger was giving way to wonder. The major powers of the galaxy were beginning to understand that something unprecedented was happening. The ship chose humanity not because we're superior, Elena continued, but because we're willing to grow. We're willing to change when change is needed. We're willing to admit when we're wrong and learn from our mistakes. The architect shared more of its knowledge through Elena, showing the assembled fleet visions of what the galaxy could become. Species working together to solve problems that had plagued them for millennia. Worlds transformed from battlegrounds into gardens. Civilizations that had been stagnant for thousands of years suddenly bursting with new growth and possibility. But Elena also sensed resistance from some of the alien leaders. Change was frightening, especially for species that had built their entire cultures around being superior to others. Some would accept the architect's gift. Others would try to take it by force or destroy it to prevent change. The real test was just beginning. 3 weeks later, Elena stood on the bridge of her transformed ship. The new horizon had been enhanced by architect technology, becoming something between a human vessel and a living organism. The walls pulsed gently with biomechanical systems, and the crew could communicate with the ship's consciousness directly. Elena had renamed the great architect ship to Symbiosis, reflecting their partnership. The name had spread throughout the galaxy, along with news of what had happened during that first encounter. "Captain," Tom reported from his enhanced navigation station, "we're receiving diplomatic requests from 47 different species. They all want to meet with you and the Symbiosis." Elena smiled. Many species were curious about the partnership and wanted to learn more. But she knew that not all the attention was friendly. Sarah looked up from her science station, her expression worried. "Captain, I'm also detecting military buildup in 7 sectors. The major powers are gathering their fleets." Elena had been expecting this. Through her bond with Symbiosis, she could sense the fear and anger spreading through the established galactic order. The ruling species had built their power on being superior to others. The idea that humans, considered a minor species, had achieved something they could not, was threatening to their entire way of thinking. Marcus received an urgent transmission. "Captain, it's from Admiral Zhang at Earth Command." Elena accepted the communication. Admiral Zhang's face appeared on the main screen, his expression grave. "Captain Rodriguez, you need to return to Earth immediately. The Galactic Council has issued an ultimatum. They're demanding that humanity surrender the alien ship for study and containment. They claim it's too dangerous to remain in the hands of an unproven species." Elena shook her head. "Admiral, the ship isn't a possession to be surrendered. It's a living being that chose to partner with us freely. I understand that, Captain, but the Council doesn't see it that way. They've given us 72 hours to comply, or they'll take the ship by force." Through her connection with Symbiosis, Elena could sense the ancient being's sadness. It had hoped that its demonstration of cooperative evolution would inspire the galaxy toward a better future. Instead, it seemed to be causing the very conflicts it had tried to prevent. "Admiral," Elena said carefully, "what's Earth's position on this?" Zhang sighed. "Officially, Earth Command supports your decisions. Unofficially, many of our leaders are terrified. We're a small species with limited military power. If the major galactic powers unite against us, we won't be able to defend ourselves." After the transmission ended, Elena walked to the observation deck where she could see Symbiosis floating alongside the new horizon. The great ship's hull pulsed with slow, rhythmic light patterns that Elena had learned to recognize as thoughtful contemplation. She reached out with her mind, touching the architect's consciousness. Images and emotions flowed between them. Symbiosis was considering returning to deep space, hiding until the current crisis passed. It didn't want its presence to bring harm to humanity. "No," Elena said aloud. "Running away won't solve anything. The galaxy needs to see what we've learned." Elena made a decision that would either save her species or doom them. Instead of fleeing or surrendering, she would bring Symbiosis to the heart of galactic civilization. She would force the major powers to confront what they were really afraid of. "Tom, set course for the Nexus," she ordered. Her crew looked at her in shock. The Nexus was the galaxy's political and economic center, a massive space station where the Galactic Council met. It was heavily defended and surrounded by the largest military fleet in known space. "Captain," Sarah said quietly, "that's exactly where they want us to go." "It'll be a trap," Elena smiled. "It would be a trap if we were going there to fight. But we're going there to teach." The journey to the Nexus took 6 days. During that time, Elena and Symbiosis worked together to prepare for what would be the most important demonstration in galactic history. They developed new technologies that could safely share the architect's evolutionary enhancement abilities with volunteer subjects. As they approached the Nexus, Elena was amazed by the size of the fleet waiting for them. Over 300 ships from 20 different species surrounded the massive space station. It was the largest military gathering in galactic history. The communication channels were filled with demands for their surrender. War Commander Thrax, now promoted to Fleet Commander, led the Korthak forces. Science Director Vex commanded the Zephyrian contingent. The Mentari Collective had sent their most powerful telepaths. Elena opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Captain Elena Rodriguez. I'm here not to fight, but to offer a gift to the galaxy." Fleet Commander Thrax's voice boomed across the communication network. "Enough words, human. Surrender the ship or be destroyed." But Elena noticed something in Thrax's voice that others might have missed. There was less conviction than before, less absolute certainty. The forced mental bonding experience he had shared with the architect had planted seeds of doubt about his aggressive approach to problem-solving. "I propose a test," Elena announced. "Allow volunteers from each species to experience what partnership with the architect truly means. If they reject the experience, Symbiosis and I will leave galactic space forever." Science Director Vex responded immediately. "Unacceptable. We will not allow you to contaminate our personnel with unknown influences." Elena felt a surge of inspiration from Symbiosis. The ancient being had an idea that was both brilliant and risky. "Then let me demonstrate alone," Elena said. "I'll show you what the architect's technology can really do." Before anyone could protest, Elena allowed Symbiosis to channel its full power through their bond. Energy flowed through Elena's consciousness, enhancing her mental abilities far beyond normal human limits. For a few moments, she became something more than human, touched by millions of years of architect wisdom and knowledge. Elena reached out with her enhanced awareness and gently touched the minds of every being in the surrounding fleet. She didn't force her way in or try to control them. Instead, she simply shared her own experiences and emotions. She showed them her memories of bonding with Symbiosis. They felt her wonder at discovering the architect's history, her joy at finding a way to help both species grow together, her determination to use this partnership for the benefit of all life in the galaxy. Most importantly, she shared her vision of what the galaxy could become. Instead of a collection of competing species trying to dominate each other, they could work together to solve problems that had seemed impossible. Diseases that had plagued civilizations for millennia could be cured. Worlds that had been damaged by war could be healed. Species that had reached evolutionary dead ends could find new paths forward. The effect was immediate and profound. Throughout the fleet, crew members found themselves experiencing emotions they had never felt before. The rigid Zephyrians felt the warmth of intuitive understanding. The aggressive Korthaks experienced the peace of cooperative achievement. The collective Mentari discovered the joy of individual creativity. But Elena also felt the resistance from some minds. Several species leaders had closed themselves off, refusing to accept any possibility of change. They saw Elena's demonstration not as a gift, but as an attack on everything they believed in. Fleet Commander Thrax was the first to break the silence that followed Elena's demonstration. His voice was different now, softer and more thoughtful. I felt it," he said slowly. "The possibility of strength used to protect instead of conquer. But how do we know this isn't just another form of control?" Elena smiled. This was exactly the question she had been hoping for. "Because true partnership requires choice," she answered. "The architect's gifts can only work with willing participants. They can't be forced or stolen. They have to be freely accepted and actively maintained." Elena made her final offer to the assembled fleet. "Anyone who wants to experience the enhancement process can volunteer. Anyone who wants to leave can go in peace. The choice is yours." Science Director Vex spoke up, his logical mind wrestling with possibilities he had never considered. "What guarantees do we have that this process is safe?" Elena looked directly at the Zephyrian ship. "The only guarantee I can give you is the same one any partnership requires, trust. But I can show you that the process is reversible. Anyone who volunteers can return to their original state if they choose." Elena felt Symbiosis preparing itself for what came next. They had offered the galaxy a chance to evolve beyond its current limitations. Now they would discover whether the major species were brave enough to accept that chance, or whether fear would drive them to destroy what they couldn't control. The next few hours would determine the future of galactic civilization. The first volunteer surprised everyone. Sub-Commander Kex, a young Zephyrian science officer, broke ranks and piloted his shuttle towards Symbiosis. His logical mind had been fascinated by the mathematical impossibilities he had witnessed during Elena's demonstration. "Kex, return to formation immediately," Science Director Vex commanded, but the young Zephyrian ignored the order. "Director, the logical conclusion is that we must gather more data. Direct experience is the only way to truly understand this phenomenon." Elena felt a wave of approval from Symbiosis as the alien shuttle docked. The architect was eager to share its gifts with anyone willing to receive them. Within an hour, Sub-Commander Kex emerged from the ship transformed. He still looked like a Zephyrian, but something fundamental had changed. His movements were more fluid, his expressions more animated. When he spoke to his director, his voice carried emotions that had been previously suppressed by Zephyrian conditioning. "Director Vex," Kex said, "I can still think logically, but now I can also feel the beauty in mathematics. I can sense the emotional currents that drive scientific discovery. The enhancement doesn't replace our abilities, it adds to them." Elena watched as more volunteers began to come forward. A Korthak warrior named Grix wanted to experience strength without aggression. A Mentari individual called Echo 7 sought to maintain her connection to the collective while developing her own unique thoughts. Each volunteer spent time aboard Symbiosis, working with Elena and the architect to customize the enhancement process for their specific species and individual needs. The results were remarkable. Grix emerged with his warrior strength intact, but now he used it to protect rather than conquer. He began proposing defensive strategies that could protect entire star systems without harming attacking forces. Echo 7 discovered that individual creativity actually strengthened her connection to the Mentari collective. Her unique thoughts provided new perspectives that helped her people solve problems they had struggled with for centuries. But not everyone was pleased with these developments. As more volunteers underwent the enhancement process, resistance from the established leaders grew stronger. "This is contamination," Science Director Vex declared. "These beings are no longer pure members of their species." Fleet Commander Thrax agreed, though Elena could sense internal conflict in his words. "The human has corrupted our people. This cannot be allowed to continue." Elena felt Symbiosis preparing its defensive systems as several ships began to power their weapons. The architect was ready to protect itself and the volunteers, but Elena had a different idea. She opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. "Directors, commanders, leaders of the galaxy. You're afraid because you think this change means losing who you are. But look at your volunteers. Are they less Zephyrian, less Korthak, less Mentari? Or are they more than they were before?" Elena gestured toward the enhanced beings who had chosen to remain visible on the communication channel. Each one radiated a sense of completion and joy that was impossible to fake. "Sub-Commander Kex," Elena called out, "tell your director what you've lost." The young Zephyrian thought for a moment. "Director, I haven't lost anything. I can still calculate hyperspace jumps and analyze quantum fields, but now I can also appreciate the elegance of the equations and feel excited about new discoveries. I'm still Zephyrian, but I'm also more than I was." Elena felt a shift in the emotional atmosphere around the fleet. Some of the fear was being replaced by curiosity. But she also sensed a group of hardline leaders who would never accept change, no matter what benefits it offered. War Master Drac of the Hegemonic Alliance was one such leader. His species had built their entire civilization on the concept of genetic purity and superiority. The idea that they could be improved by alien technology was unthinkable to him. "Enough," Drac's voice boomed across the communication channels. "This contamination ends now. All ships prepare to fire on the alien vessel." Elena felt Symbiosis surge with protective energy, but she held the ship back. Force would only prove to the galaxy that the enhanced beings were dangerous. Instead, she had a better idea. "Symbiosis," she said quietly, "show them what we're really offering." The great ship began to glow with patterns of light that were visible throughout the entire star system. But this wasn't a defensive display. Instead, Symbiosis was broadcasting the most powerful gift in its arsenal: the ability to accelerate natural evolution. Energy waves spread out from the ship, touching every vessel in the fleet. But instead of affecting the crews directly, the waves interacted with the ship's life support systems. Plants in hydroponic gardens began to bloom with extraordinary beauty. Microorganisms that cleaned the air and water evolved to work more efficiently. Even the basic biological systems that kept the ships functioning began to improve. The effects were subtle but undeniable. Throughout the fleet, environmental systems that had been struggling to maintain life support suddenly became more robust. Food production increased, air quality improved, the very foundation of life aboard the ships was enhanced. Elena smiled as she felt understanding dawn among the alien crews. This was what the architect truly offered, not domination or control, but the gentle improvement of life itself. War Master Drac, Elena said calmly, your ships are now more efficient, your crews healthier, your resources more abundant. Has symbiosis harmed you in any way? Drac's response was predictable but less forceful than before. Tricks and deceptions. We will not be fooled by temporary improvements. But Elena could sense doubt creeping into even the most resistant minds. The enhanced life support systems were continuing to improve, providing better living conditions for every being in the fleet. It was becoming harder to argue that this was somehow dangerous or evil. Elena decided it was time to make her final proposal. Leaders of the galaxy, she announced, Symbiosis and I offer you a new path forward. We call it the Architect Accords. Instead of competing with each other for dominance, we can work together to help all species reach their full potential. Elena shared her vision through the communication network. She showed them a galaxy where the Zephyrian, gift for logic, could be combined with Korthak, strength and Mentari unity to solve problems that no single species could handle alone. She demonstrated how enhanced Zephyrians could develop new technologies that would benefit everyone. She showed how evolved Korthaks could become the galaxy's protectors, defending peaceful worlds from natural disasters and external threats. She revealed how expanded Mentari could serve as a communication network that connected all species in understanding and cooperation. The choice is yours, Elena concluded. You can continue fighting each other for control of limited resources, or you can work together to create abundance for everyone. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Throughout the fleet, junior officers and crew members began voicing their support for the Architect Accords. They had seen the benefits of cooperation and wanted more. Some leaders continued to resist, but they found themselves increasingly isolated. Their own people were choosing evolution over stagnation, cooperation over competition. Fleet Commander Thrax was the first major leader to change sides. His experience with forced mental bonding had shown him the possibility of strength without violence. The Korthak Empire accepts these accords, he announced, his voice heavy with the weight of changing everything his people had believed for millennia. Science Director Vex followed soon after. His logical mind could no longer ignore the evidence before him. The Zephyrian hegemony will participate in this experiment. One by one, the major powers accepted Elena's proposal. Some did so reluctantly, others with growing enthusiasm. Within hours, the largest military fleet in galactic history had transformed into the foundation of a new cooperative alliance. Elena felt symbiosis singing with joy as the Architect Accords were formally signed. The ancient being had finally fulfilled its purpose, finding a species capable of guiding the galaxy toward cooperative evolution. But Elena knew this was just the beginning. Over the following months, she worked with leaders from dozens of species to establish the new framework for galactic civilization. Enhanced beings from different species began working together on projects that had been impossible before: the Zephyrian Korthak engineering. Cooperative developed new starship designs that were both incredibly powerful and completely peaceful. The Mentari Human Communication Network created translation systems that conveyed not just words but emotions and cultural context. The Verdani Synthetic Agricultural Alliance developed techniques for growing food in environments that had previously been barren. Elena established the Academy of Cooperative Evolution, where beings from any species could come to learn about the enhancement process and decide if they wanted to undergo it. The choice was always voluntary and the process was always reversible. As months turned to years, the galaxy began to transform. Wars became rare as species learned to resolve conflicts through understanding, rather than violence. Famine and disease became things of the past as enhanced beings developed solutions that worked for everyone. Elena, now permanently bonded with symbiosis, became not Earth's representative to the galaxy, but the galaxy's guide to a new era of cooperative evolution.